Okay, back to the second part of our lesson. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. And that was where we finished our last session. Okay, so we left that where Cook had sailed to Tahiti and he had watched the transit of Venus as he had been asked to do. So then, now when Cook sailed from England, when he left England, he was given two sets of instructions. Remember, the first one was that the Royal Society of London had instructed him to go on a scientific mission to observe and record the transit of Venus. In recording in those days just meant drawing pictures and timing it. The second set of instructions was from the Lords of the Admiralty and were in a sealed envelope, not to be opened until the first mission was completed. The Admiralty's interest was to increase the power of the British Kingdom, and the discovery of new trade routes would increase the advantages held by Britain's navy. So they were anxious to find this land that they had heard of from other explorers, and if they found that land, that they thought that they would be able to greatly improve their position as a nation. Now, the sealed orders were 2 pages. However, I'm going to read now just a small part of it. So soon as the observation of the transit of the planet of Venus shall be finished, to proceed to search for a continent or land of great extent, which may be found to the southward. And you are also, with the consent of the natives, to take possession of convenient situations in the country in the name of the King of Great Britain, or, if you find the country uninhabited, take possession for His Majesty by setting up proper marks and inscriptions as first discoverers and possessors. So you can see that England were pretty, they really wanted to get their hands on that new piece of land down in the southern hemisphere. So about a month after he read his orders, Cook began he prepared to sail, and it took him about a month to leave Tahiti, where he sailed from Tahiti here down and around until he got to New Zealand. It takes about 8 months to sail it took them about 8 months to sail from Tahiti and around New Zealand. You can see that they went in between the 2 islands to prove that they were 2 islands, not one large continent. And it took them so long because they were making detailed maps of the many islands that are in this area here, as well as a detailed map of the coastline of New Zealand. By sailing around the 2 islands, he proved that they were not connected to the Australian continent, as well as proving that they were 2 islands and not 1 island. On the 31st of March 1770, from here, the Endeavour leaves New Zealand and sails west. Now, this image here is one taken from Cook's charts or maps that he had taken. You can see here he's charted many islands in the South Pacific, these islands over here, and then down across to New Zealand, where you can see he has put the situation of the islands, New Zealand, and then the east coast of Australia. And just to show you why it takes so long, this is his very detailed map of the coast of New Zealand. And this is the whole New Zealand. However, he would have done much greater detailed maps of each piece of the coastline. Okay. It takes the Endeavour nearly 3 weeks crossing the Tasman Sea between New Zealand to Australia, until they first sight land at Point Hicks, just near the New South Wales and Victorian border. The Endeavour and crew slowly sail north along the Australian coastline, making detailed maps as they went. And this is one example of the maps of the south coast of New South Wales. On the 5th of May 1770, they arrive in Botany Bay and take their first steps on Australian soil. As Cook and several of the men rowed a boat to the shore, 2 Indigenous men try to prevent them from landing. Now, this is an artist's impression. There's the Endeavour out there, and here is what these smaller boats are called tinders, and they can ferry sailors from the boat, which can't get close to the shore because it needs to stay in deep water, and it allows these smaller boats to come into the shore for the people to land. Now, this is an excerpt from Cook's diary. He kept very detailed diaries about arriving in Botany Bay. I thought that they beckoned to us to come ashore, but in this we were mistaken. For as soon as we put the boat in, they again came to oppose us, upon which I fired a musket, which is a gun, between the two men, which had no other effect than to make them retire back where bundles of their darts lay. And one of them took up a stone and threw it at us, which caused my firing a second musket load with small shot. And although some of the shots struck the man, yet it had no other effect than to make him lay hold of a shield or target to defend himself. Immediately after this we landed, which we had no sooner done than they throwed 2 darts at us. This obliged me to fire a third shot, soon after which they both made off. So clearly the Aboriginal men were trying to defend their position from these people that came from the boats. They had never seen anything like that before. They'd never seen a boat like that. And they stayed in Botany Bay for about 9 days, and they made quite a few excursions onto the shore. They got fresh water, and they tried to make contact with the Aboriginal people, but the Aboriginal people were either aggressive against them or would just retreat into the bush. So after 9 days, Cook started heading north, and the Endeavour sails north along the New South Wales and Queensland coast. Again, he was mapping all the way with much more detailed maps than this one. You can also see here how they thought Tasmania was joined onto the mainland. They didn't realise that Bass Strait was in here separating them. And this is also a picture here of, a map here of Cook and his charting of Botany Bay. As they go up the coast, they stop near Gladstone, which is about just north of Brisbane, then at Broad Sound a bit further on, Palm Island and Mission Bay. But on the 11th of June 1770, the Endeavour runs into part of the coral reef. Now, we know it as the Great Barrier Reef. And it makes a big hole in the underneath of the ship, and it starts to take on water. So they throw their supplies, their guns and equipment overboard. Remember, they had very heavy guns like cannon on board to try to make it lighter. After 2 days, the Endeavour is floated, but is taking in a lot of water. For more than 4 days, they try to make their way north, but in the end, they stop at what is now called Cooktown to repair the ship. And I'm going to stop this one here so that we can do one last one for the end of Cook's journey.